We're talking about the process and going through the process. So maybe it's your one word that God's given you for the year. Maybe it's something you feel that God is calling you to or pointing you towards. And sometimes we're so tempted to just want that to happen overnight or the next day. But God's always more concerned about the process than He is our progress. So I want to take you to a place in the Bible. It's actually one of my very favorite parts of the Bible. It's kind of become my life verse. Amy and I shared this together at our wedding, and through the years it's just kind of morphed into a life verse for me. It's Hebrews chapter 12. I want to just share the first couple of verses with you. It says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses." Now chapter 11 is right before this, obviously, and in chapter 11 in Hebrews, there's this talk of all of these heroes of the faith. And so now the writer of Hebrews picks up here and says, all of these heroes, all the faith heroes are watching us and they're cheering us on. And he says, "Let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith." Well, we don't know exactly who wrote Hebrews, but we think it may be Paul. One of the reasons is because in several places, Paul uses this analogy of a race and compares it to the Christian journey or the Christian walk. And here, the writer of Hebrews does the same thing and says that we have been given a race to run. But one thing that's important here is that the race is to be run with endurance. That speaks to us about the process, that it's not an instantaneous thing, but it's something we have to have endurance for. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so whatever it is that you're called to right now, wherever it is that God is growing you, whatever that word is that He's given you, or whatever He's called you to, run that race with endurance. Recognize that it's a process and that God is more concerned about the process than He is your progress. The other thing I want you to note here is that not all of our races are the same. Not all of us run sprints. Not all of us run long distance. I remember when I was growing up and running track, sprints weren't my thing. I remember the coaches taking me out and telling me they wanted me to run the high hurdles. I looked at the high hurdles and said, no way, you've got to be kidding. So instead they put me in the lower hurdles, but it's a longer race. I can just tell you it was hell, but that was my race. My race is not your race. God has called each of us to a different word, to a different calling, to a different place. Whatever your race is, embrace it. Let it be yours. And the writer of Hebrews says, to do that, you have to lay aside every weight and every sin. Think about that. We don't see track stars lined up like they're going to ski to run, or dressed like they're going to ski. They're lined up in skimpy stuff because they want every advantage they can possibly get. I mean, sometimes it's a little scary what they're wearing, but they want every weight taken off. They want to be as light as possible. And that's what the writer of Hebrews is saying. Take off all the weight so that you can run the race the best you can. Here's what he's saying. Maybe you need to lay aside the baggage of the past. Or maybe you need to lay aside the baggage of other people's thoughts and opinions. Or maybe there's things on your schedule that you need to lay aside. They may be good things, but maybe all of those things aren't what God is calling you to do. Lay aside every weight to get every advantage you can. And he finishes by saying this, look to Jesus, the founder, the author, and perfecter of your faith. The author of your race, the one who gave you your word, the one who gave you your calling. Look to Jesus and allow Him to perfect what He's doing in you. But it's all about the process and remembering that the process is greater than the progress. Here's to running your race.